When you were angry at God, did you also turn your back on him, or were you just angry?
No, I did. I did everything the opposite to what I knew God would be pleased with.
Which would make you even more miserable.
Absolutely, of course. Of course, that was my journey into misery.
Journey into misery.
But I'm going to be speaking for this next month, and thanks to whoever got the idea to invite me, bring the old guy back. I'm 75 this summer.
Wow.
And whoever got the idea to invite me to come back, it may have been Rod or Gary Gerard or somebody here inside, to do this month of teaching and to publish. Now, I won't be able to handle the entire book in 1 month. I mean, it took me a year back in '95 to get through the book. Yeah. But the entire book will be on almost one, maybe 2 verses at the most for each chapter in the book. That you have right in front of you there, and I'm interested. I haven't seen it yet in its final form, but there you have in front of you something that looks like it's might be interesting.
Yeah, no kidding. Why don't we show it again, Mr. Director? There it is.
Okay.
Journey to Joy, Steps to Joy from Christ's most famous sermon. We got 5 minutes left, David. I think it's really a powerful statement to the nation and to those who know and love you around the world, that your entire family love the Lord. My dad always made the point that if a man has any responsibility before God at all, it's to his wife and to his children.
Yeah. And Number one, absolutely first.
Now, it's obviously the case that that was your priority. Why was it such a priority for you? What drove you to be the dad and now the grandfather and great-grandfather that you are? I mean, I've seen you in action, rolling on the ground with those kids and throwing them in the pool and playing with them. And I've seen you, off in the corner of the studio mentoring one of your boys. And you every time one of your grandkids comes around unexpectedly, I've seen you with your arms wide open and hugging them. Did you determine intentionally to become like this, or is this something just in your nature?
I think it comes from my own childhood. My dad got caught overseas by the Second World War, and there was no civilian transportation from Egypt back to Canada. And my mother and my 2 sisters and I were scheduled to go by boat, of course, in those days. That was before there was transatlantic air flights, particularly for civilians. And it didn't happen because the Second World War started. And so my dad was separated from us through almost 6 years away. And I think maybe it had something to do with that.
So you missed affection at a time when you needed it.
I know my dad always loved me, but he was a real Victorian. Men don't show outward affection. Now, I'm the opposite to that. Just all kinds of affection. But I knew my dad loved me. When he returned, I hid behind the bushes. My sisters had to drag me out, I was 8 years old now. But then, you know what he did when I was 9? He taught me to drive the car on the back roads. And you know why he did it, I think? He wanted me to sit on his knee. And he wouldn't have had an excuse as a Victorian father to have a 9-year-old son sit on his knee, except that he was teaching him to drive the car. So I mean, I always knew that he loved me very, very much. But I suppose that maybe is something down underneath my psyche that makes me so adamant that my family is first. That's my first responsibility as the priest of that family. Before God, and as a prophet from God to my family. Now, let me mention, may I just inject something, Jim? I know you're in charge here of this interview.
Go right ahead. We got 2 minutes.
On the 6th of June, we start our Jubilee year for Crossroads Christian Communications, the 49th anniversary. In Israel, the Jubilee began on the first day of the 50th year. And here we are, June the 6th, 1962. We went on television, Saturday Night Live, 15 minutes. And live, they didn't have any taping facilities whatsoever.
You were the original.
Had to be live.
You were the original Saturday Night Live.
Okay, we were Saturday Night Live, 11:30 to 11:15. The news and sports would hop across Algonquin Park by microwave up to the Pembroke television station, and we came on with the music of Norma Jean and her family, and that was what really opened the door. The owner of the station said, no preaching on my station, but you can introduce the songs. And so between the late news and sports, the only late movie of the week, that's where the Crossroads ministry began, and 100 Huntley Street and the other productions we've done through the years had its genesis right there. So in the Jubilee year, everybody was set free. And I remember Billy Diamond, Grand Chief Billy Diamond, who in Ottawa, he at the forgiveness summit there for the Native people, in which the Minister of Indian Affairs at that time, Chuck Strahl, represented the government, Elijah was there too, Elijah Harper, one of the great heroes of faith. But Billy Diamond, he was one of the speakers. He's passed on. The government of Quebec gave him the highest honors. They made him an icon, literally, in the message which I watched over the internet of Billy's funeral service up in Waskaganish along Hudson's Bay. But Billy shouted, "Freedom!" He must have shouted freedom 10 times from the platform. He just felt that in this whole forgiveness thing with the Prime Minister Harper and the asking of forgiveness on behalf of the government of Canada for the abuses in the past. And now the Forgiveness Summit. Freedom, freedom, that's what happened on the Jubilee year. Debts were forgiven. It was hard to get a mortgage in the last 5 or 10 years because you had to write it off on the Jubilee year.
Right. Well, that's really exciting. Now, I want to go just about a minute or two over time here, Mr. Director, because I want to ask this as the final question. I don't think anyone has wept on television more than David Mainse. Oh. And genuinely so. Your emotions are very close to the surface. You have a huge heart of compassion for the broken. How does emotion relate to joy, or is there a connection?
Well, I don't know. I think I had that along the way. I had that capacity when I first began in the ministry with my students. I was a school teacher, public school teacher, and we had students that came from very difficult situations, and I would go visit them in their homes, and alcoholism, and supported by means that I won't mention, and so on, and very little support from government agencies. Basically, in those days, it was people that helped people, and churches helped people, and we didn't let the government, or look at the government as having to do it all. And I think that's where it began, was in a sense of God's love, a sense of Jesus weeping over Jerusalem because of the mess they were in. I mean, they were in a huge mess. The government, Roman government, the priests, the senior priesthood were corrupt, and all of that. They were just appointees of the Roman government, you can imagine, and they were on the take. That's why he got angry one time, kicked over. I got angry, and I don't cry at that time, but I have kicked over a chair or two because I got angry. Jesus kicked over the tables of the money changers. But but people used to tease me a lot about that, and husbands whose wives wanted to watch Huntley Street. Well, let's turn on Huntley Street and watch David cry. Well, I didn't do it every day. And by the way, people who don't cry can have just as much compassion as I have, and maybe more. I just happen to have that sense. And McLuhan, I was doing that long before McLuhan came out with his, the most famous communications professor in history. He said, television is emotion. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I sensed a call from God to do television over the years, because I certainly just did what was natural with me, and that was showing emotion.
Well, you did it well, David, and it's a testimony to your integrity that Crossroads is in such marvelous shape and just moving forward with the proclamation of the gospel, even though you're 75.
In August.
In August, you've mentored and you have trained and you have set an example. And Journey into Joy is really an indicator of the heart of David Mainse. And you're going to want this book, friends. You make sure that you get right to your phone or to the internet or to the mailbox with your request for this wonderful book. It's going to fly off the shelves. And remember, when you do, your support is critical to the ongoing legacy of David and Norma Jean. Thanks for coming our way, David.
Thank you, Jim.